enjoying a romantasy. Like, who am I? Hey, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be starting on a reading vlog. And this is a reading vlog that I've been wanting to make for years, and now I'm finally making the time for it because today we're going to be reading books that are inspired by some of my favorite TV shows. So I have a handful of a bunch of different TV shows that I'm currently obsessed with, and I'm going to be reading some of the books that maybe inspired the show or books that were written because they were inspired by the show. One of the shows that I've been really obsessed with is Heated Rivalry. I mean, me and the rest of the world, right? Heated Rivalry is something that I was watching as it was airing at the end of last year, and I just absolutely became obsessed with it. And I do typically love like gay hockey sports romance. Like, that is my jam. Like, Him by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy is one of my favorite books of all time, but I have not read the book Heated Rivalry that the show is based off of. So I thought now would be the perfect opportunity for me to read the book that inspired the show. And I know that technically Heated Rivalry is actually the sequel in this book series because I believe the book Game Changers is actually the first book in the series. But for this video, we're going to be reading this one, Heated Rivalry. I don't think that I need to read Game Changers in order to read this one, but I guess we'll find out. And then the next show that I've been absolutely obsessed with is The Vampire Diaries. This is actually kind of the show that got me back into like my TV show obsession because my sister showed me this show for the first time at the end of 2024. Like, that was the first time I had ever watched this show. And ever since, I've watched the entirety of The Vampire Diaries 3 different times. I've watched the originals 3 times. I love this show so much. So I started looking on TikTok for any books that are comparable to The Vampire Diaries, and I came across 2 that I thought were kind of interesting. So the first one that I heard about is this book called The Wolf King. This is actually a book that I have heard of before, but I haven't really looked into it because it's romantasy, and I'm not really a big romantasy reader. But all I heard about it in this TikTok was that this book is basically if Damon was a werewolf instead of a vampire. And I was like, okay, say less, like literally sign me up. I'm here for that. Because I kind of had the same experience when I was reading the book Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I kind of felt like in that book it was Damon, but if he was a werewolf, and I really loved that one. So even though this one does feel like it could be a little bit outside of my comfort zone, I was like, let's go with The Wolf King, let's read that one. And in that same TikTok video, she mentioned this other book called Stalked by Seduction and Shadows. And this is one that I had never heard of before, but I added it to my TBR because she said this one has major Klaus and Caroline vibes. And I was like, shut up, because Klaus and Caroline is probably like my biggest ship from The Vampire Diaries. I just adore Klaus as a character. Like, I think Klaus is my favorite fictional character from this world. And Klaus and Caroline own my heart, so I knew that I had to read this one for this video as well. And then another show that I've gotten obsessed with pretty recently is Gilmore Girls. This is a show that I also watched for the very first time at the end of last year, and I am such a big shipper of Luke and Lorelai. Like, oh my god, one of my favorite grumpy sunshine couples that I've ever seen in my life. When it comes to Rory, I was definitely more team Jess. And so I was looking once again on TikTok for book recommendations for fans of Gilmore Girls, and I stumbled across this one called Next of Kin. And this is from the author Hannah Bonham Young, and this is an author that I have read from before, and I've given one of her books 5 stars before, but this is one that I haven't read. And this book was recommended as being perfect for fans of Gilmore Girls, especially if you were team Jess. And the dedication for this book actually says, this book is dedicated to those who think Jess was Rory's best boyfriend. The rest of you are wrong. So I'm gonna be reading Next of Kin in this video. Then the show that I'm currently watching and the show that I am so obsessed with right now, you might have guessed it, it's Supernatural. I've been watching Supernatural for the very first time ever since like the very end of December last year, and I'm now on season 9 of the show. Supernatural has 15 seasons, and I've been tearing through these seasons in the last few months that I'm already on season 9, and I'm just so obsessed with Supernatural. Like, I don't know why I didn't start watching this sooner. So I knew that I wanted to read something in this video that was inspired by Supernatural, and I was looking through TikTok trying to find the perfect recommendation, and I stumbled across this book called Shot in the Dark. And this book was recommended not just in one TikTok, not just 2, but in 4 separate TikToks I found of people talking about this book, saying if you miss Supernatural or if you want to read a story of somebody that's kind of like Sam and Dean, then you need to check out this book. And I was like, wow, like there was a lot of people mentioning that this book is very similar to Supernatural. And I think the reason why is because I discovered that this book is actually about these 2 guys that are hunters. And it's really cool because when you look on Goodreads, even in the description of the book, it says for fans of Supernatural. And one of the blurbs on the back of the book says, if you're missing Sam and Dean, this is the book for you. And so this is one I immediately added to my TBR. And the reason why I'm even more excited to read this one is because they said the love interest in this book is the hunter that is a little bit more like Sam. And if you didn't know, I am a Sam Winchester girl, okay? Like, I love Sam. I know that might be an unpopular opinion, and I do love Dean as well, but like, oh my god, Sam owns my heart. So I cannot wait to read this book. And I downloaded downloaded this book to my Kindle and I stumbled across the artwork that's included in the front of this book and I was like, oh my god, like look at the artwork and tell me that that's not Sam Winchester. Like I was dying. And then the last thing that I'm gonna be reading, I stumbled across these books that are supernatural books. So I didn't know about this, but apparently there's a 17 book series and it's really cool because these books are stories about Sam and Dean that take place in between the real episodes of Supernatural. This is the first book in the series. This one is called Nevermore and it's so cute because this is like the tiniest little mass market paperback. So something that I thought was absolutely fascinating is in the front of this book it says, note, this novel takes place between the second season Supernatural episodes Crossroad Blues and Croatoan. So like how cool is that to know that this story takes place in between two very specific episodes of Supernatural? Like how fun. Premise for this one especially intrigues me because it says two brothers investigate a series of murders in New York City that seem to be based on Edgar Allan Poe's horror stories, leading them to a chilling encounter with a terrifying foe. Like what do you mean the first book takes place in New York, like one of my favorite places in the world? So I love the idea of this book series. Like can you imagine if these books are so good and there's 17 of them? And it's really cool because from what I understand, all of these books kind of follow along with the seasons of the show. Oh my god, I'm so excited. I hope that this is good. Those are all of the books that I'm planning to read in today's video. I'm so excited to get started. My sister and I are going to be going out to try this new little waffle breakfast spot that I've never been to before. And then later tonight, I'm planning on jumping into the first thing for this video. I think I want to start with Shot in the Dark. Okay, hi, I wanted to check in with my first update for the vlog because I have made some reading progress. Yesterday, I did end up going to this really cute little waffle breakfast place with my sister, and it was really cool because they had a lot of different kinds of waffles there. Like you could order savory ones or sweet ones, and of course I got one of both. But it was so good. The breakfast sandwich that I got, it had waffles on both sides, and then it had like sausage, bacon, and egg, and this really good like chipotle aioli sauce in the middle. Oh my gosh, it was incredible. And then the sweet one that I got was even better because it was like blueberry and cheesecake and like graham crackers and like lemon curd. Oh my god, it was so good. That was an amazing way to start the day yesterday. But anyways, late last night before bed, I started reading Shot in the Dark. And this is one that I've been a little bit nervous to read because it is described as being like fantasy. It's like romance, fantasy, romantasy. It's not really like my typical kind of a book, you know? This one is definitely one of the ones that's more outside of my comfort zone and one that I was a little bit nervous to read. But when I tell you I started reading this last night and I could not stop. I got so hooked into the story and I read 45% of the book last night. I was reading past midnight, which I rarely ever do anymore. And like, to be honest, would I be loving this story so much if I wasn't currently really obsessed with Supernatural? Like, I don't know. But I also think if you're someone who's also obsessed with Supernatural, I think you would really enjoy this book because these two hunters in this book, they are literally Sam and Dean, like to a T. And so in this story, our main protagonist that we're following is this fairy. She's this girl named Sylvia. And right at the start of this book, I was like, oh no, like, oh god, because for the first like 30 to 40 pages, you're reading a lot about like her fairy world and her fairy friends and all of these fairy things that I was like, I don't know if I could get into this because like I don't even know if I've ever read a book about fairies, like not like this, because she's a fairy. She's tiny. She's like Tinkerbell size. There's a point in this book where they put her in a shoebox, like that's how tiny she is. But what's so interesting is that Sylvia starts to hear about this like human house that's like right up the road from where her little like fairy village is or whatever. And when she goes to the human house, she hears about these hunters that are there and she starts to get all worried because she's heard all of these different legends about hunters and like how scary they are and how they kill monsters. And then we get introduced to the two different hunters in this book and their names are Cliff and John. And like, let me tell you, Cliff is literally 100% Dean Winchester, like to a T. And then John is very much giving more Sam vibes. And we actually do get John's perspective in this book. So John is the love interest. So we have this really funny and entertaining moment at the start of the book where they're in their hotel room and they see her as a fairy and they think that she's a threat. So it's kind of like this crazy confrontation when they first see each other because they're both afraid of each other. But then they just have these really cute banter moments as they're trying to get to know her and like understand her species. And she's trying to understand them. I think something that I'm loving about this book and what I do love about a lot of books is when you have the kind of like fish out of water trope where you have a character who's like outside of their normal world and like outside of things that they understand. It almost reminds me of like Ministry of Time in that way, where you have this girl who's a fairy. She's never seen humans before. And I love the different interactions that she's having with them where she like looks at the TV and she's like, what is that? that? And then she's like looking at the people on the TV and she's like, can they see us? And it's just like so cute. Like I love that trope so much where you have a character who like doesn't know humanity, doesn't understand us, is like observing our weird quirks. And I'm just loving the banter between her and these two hunters. Listen to this one quote from Cliff and tell me this is not Dean Winchester when he says, I don't give a shit about your campfire stories. Blink those little doe eyes all you want, sister. You're keeping something from us. If you think we won't find out what that is, you have another thing coming. Is that not the most Dean Winchester quote you've ever heard in your life? I also love that this character Sylvia, she had like a really great conversation with John, you know, the hunter that's more like Sam, where she was like asking him to define like what is a monster to you. And I feel like that conversation was so good because she's like, then by your own definition, you're a monster in my eyes. But I really feel like this does feel like an episode of Supernatural in a way because these two guys, they're hunters. I don't think they're brothers, but they have been hunters together for almost 10 years. So like they know each other very well and they're very protective of each other. I mean, gosh, you know, like what's stopping me from shipping the two hunters in this? Nothing. But I love that they have a lot of the same quirks as Sam and Dean. And it kind of does feel like an episode of Supernatural because when they're in this motel room, they're talking about this case that they're working on. And there's these different spirits that they're trying to track down and like all these different things. So they do a lot of the research in the same way that they do on Supernatural. And it's really cool because now this girl Sylvia, this fairy, she's trying to like help them on the case now that they know that they're not a threat to each other. So they have a lot of really cute bonding moments as they're like working on this case together and like trying to figure out things. And she's constantly surprised by like how soft and how gentle he is for being such a huge human. It's also really cool to like learn more about like what she can do as a fairy because she does have the ability to like heal people and she does have a lot of magic abilities within her. So it almost does feel like her character is kind of comparable to Cass in the show in a way. I mean, I'm really curious how this like fairy romance thing is gonna work, you know, because at this point she's like this big and you know, John's character is like normal human size. So I'm kind of curious like how that's gonna work. I'm like, is she gonna become human sized by the end? I don't know, but I'm actually loving this so much. Like this feels like it could be a 5-star for me. There have already been moments where I'm like kicking my feet over how cute the banter is between them. And we already got the iconic line of the like, who did this to you? There have just already been so many moments that have made me like so giddy as far as the romance goes. But then at the same time, there have been so many moments that made me laugh out loud. Cliff's character is so Dean coded and a lot of his lines are just so funny and like his delivery, like that is exactly the way that Dean would say something. So I've been smiling, I've been laughing, I'm having a great time, so much to the point that I actually ended up ordering this book off of Pango last night. I'm only halfway through the book now, but I was like, no, I'm loving this so much. Like you don't understand. I've been annotating so much in my Kindle that I was like, I need to have a physical copy so that I can annotate a physical copy because of how much I'm loving it. And like how exciting to know that this is actually the first book in a trilogy. Oh my gosh, I was so relieved when I heard. And the third book is actually coming out this summer. Look at me enjoying a romantasy. Like who am I? Even in the past, anytime I've enjoyed a romantasy, I've never enjoyed it quite like this. It's just so cute and I wasn't expecting it to be this cute. So anyway, my only plans for the day are to lay in bed and finish reading this book. I might make myself an iced coffee, but it's going so well and I can't wait to finish the rest of this book.
Of your life, every single night, the confetti's raining down. You put your hands to the sky, center of the crowd, you're the talk of the town. And I tell myself I don't want that, what glitters isn't gold. I tell myself I don't need it, cause I'm fine on my own, but I hate being alone.
Okay, hi, it is many hours later. It's now like 4:30 in the afternoon. I ended up spending most of the day just reading in bed because it's kind of been this like cloudy, moody day. And then I did end up going to the gym later this afternoon, which was really great because I was able to finish the rest of the book while I was on that treadmill at the gym. And I loved this book so much. I think I'm giving this book 5 stars, which is crazy. Like when have I ever given a romantasy book 5 stars? I think this was like my perfect, ideal romantasy book. I think because I'm currently obsessed with Supernatural, that definitely had an impact on how much I loved this because the characters Cliff and John reminded me so much of Sam and Dean, and I genuinely think if you love Supernatural, you need to read this book because these characters are so Sam and Dean coded in every single way possible. And I think this was the perfect romantasy book for me because it had an equal amount of fantasy that kind of felt a little bit outside of my comfort zone with some of the fairy magic and stuff like that, but it also had an equal balance of feeling like an episode of Supernatural. So there was something very specific about this book that worked for me so well. Not only that, but like I adored the romance in this book, oh my god, I was screaming. I wasn't sure exactly how the romance was gonna work for me in this book, you know, because she's like a tiny little fairy, and she stays that size for pretty much the entirety of the book. But I feel like that almost made the romance in the book even better, because so much of their attraction wasn't even physical. It was like their banter and the way that they would like pine after each other, try to protect each other. Oh my god, it was such a slow burn between them, but it was so good. Like the way that I tore through this 420-page romantasy book within 24 hours. I mean, how am I not supposed to ship them when she's saying things like this to him? When she says, "Hasn't anyone ever been gentle with you? You don't strike me as someone who is meant to be so lonely." Dude! And this line, this one really took me out. She said, "He carried a world of suffering and violence on his shoulders, yet he found the capacity to be gentle with me." Dude, I just feel like John was like the perfect love interest in this book for me. Not only that, but there were no cheesy nicknames. You know how often I talk about how like I hate reading so many romantasy books because they have the dumbest nicknames for each other and I can't stand it? There are no nicknames in this book, thank God. Somebody was listening. And I probably loved him as much as I did because I do love Sam Winchester, and I need more love interests to be written like him. He's like my favorite kind of love interest because I love that he seems kind of intimidating because he's really good at being a hunter and he's very smart and very athletic, but at the same time, he's also very like bookish and nerdy, and he's always on his laptop trying to like learn more things and like research more things to help them. But I adored not only John's character, but I loved his friendship with this guy Cliff in this book. Like they were so cute, and he just brought so much comedy to this book. Like he would have so many amazing one-liners. I was underlining things left and right. I'm so glad that I decided to buy this book off of Pango last night because I can't wait to annotate the crap out of my copy when I get it in my hands. I'm also really glad that for the most part, this book didn't really end on a cliffhanger. Like I think it wrapped up things nice enough that I don't feel the need to like drop everything and start the next book right away, even though I want to. I downloaded the second book to my Kindle because I was like, I need to know. And the second book is called Hunted in the Shadows, and look at the artwork that is included at the beginning of this next book. Like, are you fucking kidding me? I was like, is this not literally fan art of Sam and Dean? Like, what do you mean? So I'm very excited to read this second book, Hunted in the Shadows. I'm probably going to be reading it at some point in March because I don't think I can hold back. And like genuinely, if you have any book recommendations for books that feel like supernatural or books that have a love interest with a guy that's similar to Sam Winchester, I am all ears. Anyway, I need to get back to the house. I need to shower because I feel so gross after the gym.
No matter how hard you try, you cannot push me out, so just listen. I've been thinking of you since you broke it and moved to LA. And no matter how hard I try, I cannot get you out of my system. I know we both have some things left to say. Can you stay a little longer?
Okay, hi, hello. It has been about 2 days since the last time that I updated this vlog. It was so crazy because the other night when I went to Chipotle, I went through the drive-thru to go and pick up my order, and I said I was there to pick up an order for Gabby, and they handed me an order, and then I was like, weird, like it feels really light, and I looked at it, and it wasn't my order, but it was under the name Gabby to pick up at the same time, which I thought was so weird because I don't really know any other Gabbys in real life, let alone other people that could be living in my area. So I was like, okay, that's weird. And then I had to let them know like, oh, this isn't my order, and they were like, oh, okay, we're still working on yours. And then it took almost like 15 minutes. And then even after I went home, I was like, why does this bag feel so heavy? And then there was an extra burrito in my bag. I don't know what's going on at that Chipotle, but at least I got an extra burrito and they made my food right this time. But anyway, I am here with a reading update because this morning I ended up reading the entirety of Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. And as far as the Gilmore Girls comparison in this book goes, I think the only thing that was really like Gilmore Girls about this book was this guy who's the love interest, this guy Warren. Like he is definitely very Jess coded in a lot of ways, and so I do see the comparisons, but otherwise there was nothing about this book that was giving me any Gilmore Girls vibes at all. You know, it really sucks because I think the premise for this book was really cool, and I think this book had all of the elements to be a really great story because we're following this young woman named Chloe, and she's about 24 years old, and right at the start of this book, the opening chapter is her getting this phone call that her birth mother, this woman who basically like abandoned her as a child, has had another baby, and basically that baby is about to get put into foster care unless she does something about it. Like she's the only living family member who could take in this baby. So she has a really difficult decision at the start of this book, like trying to figure out if she wants to take in a baby because she's only 24 years old. And then the love interest in this book is this guy named Warren, and he's also around her age. And then he's also dealing with a kind of similar situation where he's trying to get custody of his younger brother, who's this 15-year-old, and his brother is deaf. And at the start of this book, they're both faced with this challenge because I guess neither of them are financially responsible enough or financially stable enough to actually adopt their siblings. And so they get told about this program that they have called Team Up, where essentially they're gonna have to like live together in order to be co-parents to like make enough money to have both kids, which like I don't really know how realistic this is, to be honest. I feel like this might be one of the things where you have to like suspend your disbelief a little bit. I don't really know if they have a service like this in place for these types of situations, but it did feel a little bit far-fetched to me that this girl was just like, yeah, okay, like let me move in with a guy that I don't know and have never met before. I mean, she was a little bit like hesitant, but I also feel like she agreed to it before she even met him, which was very strange to me. But don't get me wrong, I do love the roommates to lovers trope. Like that's one of my top favorites. And this one also kind of has like an enemies to lovers vibe to it because this guy Warren definitely has a little bit of an attitude. You know, he's very much like Jess from Gilmore Girls. But I think there's a number of reasons why this book didn't really work for me. And it was mostly because the romance in this book felt so insta-love. It was like insta-lust between these two right away as soon as they saw each other. And I just didn't really feel any romantic chemistry between them, to be honest. Like it was all entirely lust. Like there was nothing romantic between them. These characters were dealing with like very serious things, you know, like trying to adopt their siblings. And it all just felt very shallow and like very surface level. And then I swear like the last third of the book was just nothing but sex scenes. And I was like, okay, I'm so bored. Like I don't really care about either of them. And he gave her a cheesy nickname, which I also kind of hated. So I don't know. I think I'm going to give this one 2 stars. And to be honest, like the only reason why I ended up finishing this on audio is because the audiobook was really short. It was only 7 hours long. And I was kind of like staying at the house today because I was doing a lot of laundry. I was washing my clothes, my towels, and all that stuff. I was also updating my journal. So like I was doing a lot of mindless tasks while I was listening to this audiobook today. But in hindsight, like I probably just should have DNF'd it because I wasn't really loving it from the beginning. And I think the only thing about this book that is comparable to Gilmore Girls at all is the guy Warren. Like he is kind of like Jess. But even that wasn't enough to make me like this book because I love Jess's character and Warren was just whatever. He was very forgettable. So that is a bummer about that book. And I would love to know if you had any book recommendations that you would recommend for fans of Gilmore Girls because I really do want to read something. I mean, last October, I did end up reading that book. That's the If It Makes You Happy romance book. And that's the one that everybody compares to Gilmore Girls because the main characters are very, you know, Luke and Lorelai vibes. And I would definitely agree with that one. Like, I do think that that book reads a lot like Gilmore Girls, but even that book, I only gave like 3.5 stars. I thought it was fine. It was a little bit overhyped for me, to be honest. But maybe I should look into more Gilmore Girls books that are more recommended for fans of Luke and Lorelai, as opposed to like the love interest of Rory, because Luke and Lorelai are like the biggest reason why I loved Gilmore Girls as much as I did. But anyway, I just pulled up at the gym because I decided that I'm going to start on the next thing. I think I want to listen to The Wolf King next on audio. I was able to find this audiobook on Spotify. And I also did have another reading update because last night I tried to start reading the book called Stalked by Seduction and Shadows because it was compared to like Klaus and Caroline vibes and I was really looking forward to it. And I literally got like 50 or maybe 60 pages into this book before it was an immediate DNF from me, which really sucks. And it sucks because I wasn't even hating the writing necessarily. Like I actually thought the vampire stuff was really interesting and we were following this girl. But the reason why this was an immediate DNF for me is because this guy that's like the Klaus-like character, I can't even remember his name, but the love interest dude, he first sees her when she's like a little girl and he starts to call her his little flame. And then he's like watching her through the years as she's growing up. And he doesn't like make any moves on her until she's like over the age of 18. But the fact that he was like watching her all these years and like watching her grow up, it kind of felt like icky. It kind of felt like grooming or something. Like, I don't know, it was really weird. And I didn't really like that at all. Like it immediately just made me like, ugh! It was like repulsive. So I didn't end up reading this one, even though I did like the writing overall in general. So like maybe I'll have to give this author another shot in the future, but this book was definitely not for me. So hopefully this other book, The Wolf King, hopefully this one is more for me because this is the other book that I'm reading for fans of the Vampire Diaries. Like hopefully this werewolf character gives me all of the Damon Salvatore vibes because that's why I'm reading it.
Like champagne without the bubbles, made it all.
Okay, hi, hello. It is now the next morning. I just wrapped up this morning doing a live show with Kayla for How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates. It was a really fun live show discussion. And last night ended up being a really great night. I watched more of season 9 of Supernatural with my mom, and it's going so well. I'm really loving season 9. I'm especially loving Cass in this season. Like, he is just cracking me up. Like, the episode that's called I'm No Angel. I was obsessed. Like, I love him so much. We also watched the episode last night that was called Dog Dean Afternoon. If you know, you know. That was hilarious. Anyway, I am here with an update because I have started reading The Wolf King. And last night I got about 100 pages into this book, and I know you're probably annoyed with me, but I think I'm gonna DNF this one. You know, maybe I should have known that this would not be the book for me because as soon as I saw it on Spotify, the premise on Spotify says A Court of Thorns and Roses meets Game of Thrones. And I was like, if I had seen that beforehand, I don't know if I would have selected this book for myself to read, to be honest, because I am not a Game of Thrones person. I'm just not a big fan of Game of Thrones. I tried to watch the whole first season back when it was coming out, and I just could not care less. I'm really not not a big fantasy person in general, but especially for stuff that feels like Game of Thrones, like not for me. And then also A Court of Thorns and Roses is a book that I have not yet read. I don't know if I have any desire to read that book series. And so maybe I should have known that this was not going to be the book for me. In the first 100 pages of this book, I'm already feeling so not interested in anything. And I think something that I didn't realize about this book when going into it is that it's not just about werewolves. It's about this like kingdom and like this main character girl, she's a princess. And I think that's something I realized that I really don't like about fantasy is I don't like reading about like royalty and like kingdoms and like fantasy politics, because for some reason I thought that this was just going to involve werewolves. And in the past, I have enjoyed books that just involve that, you know, like Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I don't mind reading about werewolves, but when it gets paired with this like very fantasy setting, I mean, the general premise of this book says when a princess is kidnapped by an alpha, war rages between the humans and the wolves, but soon forbidden attraction starts to grow. It says that night when the alpha escapes, he kidnaps her and takes her to the rugged lands north of the border where the once warring werewolf clans are beginning to unite, and he thinks that she is the key to winning the war against the humans. Like, I do not care. I don't care about the war. That's one of my least favorite things to read about in a fantasy novel ever. Like, I don't care about wars between the wolves and the humans. And even the romance doesn't feel very promising in this. And this guy that's like the love interest in this book, he literally feels like a copy and paste of so many love interests that I read in these romantasy books. I mean, right at the start of this book when they're meeting for the first time, he's like, if you don't shut your mouth, I'm gonna throw you over my shoulder and carry your little ass out of here. And like, that's the kind of vibe that he's giving. And I feel like that's the vibe of like every male love interest in a romantasy book ever. And like, is he giving Damon Salvatore vibes? Like, maybe a little bit, but like, I just don't care. I don't care about this man. I don't care about the romance between him and this princess. It's reading like so many other romantasy books that I've tried to get into, but I just don't care about. And I know you're probably wondering like, why would I even bother then? Or why would I even try? But I always want to give books like this a chance, because like even earlier in this video, I would have never tried Shot in the Dark on my own. And like, that was a romantasy book that I ended up giving 5 stars. So it's like, you really never know. And I'm just upset that both of the books that I ended up choosing for the Vampire Diaries ended up being DNFs, and I really didn't like either of them. So I could really use any recommendations that you have. Like, if you have any books that you're like, oh, this is comparable to the Vampire Diaries for like whatever reason, then please let me know in the comments, because I'm seeking recommendations. I'm thinking this morning I really want to go out and get something to eat. I might actually go down to Bellingham and like get an acai bowl from Robex. And I think I want to start on Heated Rivalry today. I just got the audiobook checked out from my library. So I think this is going to be my next read, and I'm very excited. Oh my God, I'm like kicking my feet at the fact that I get to read Heated Rivalry today. Sorry, the lighting is kind of weird in my car right now, but I wanted to update you because it's almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I've been reading Heated Rivalry all morning. I just got up to chapter 11, which puts me at about 128 pages in, and so far this one has been going good. I just don't feel like I'm as obsessed with this book as I was with the show, because if you don't know anything about this story, we're basically following these 2 hockey players who are really big rivals. One of them is the captain of this hockey team in Montreal, and then the other is a captain of a team in Boston, and both of their teams have been rivals for years and years and years. And something that I thought was kind of wild is that the prologue of this book actually starts with a sex scene. And I was like, whoa, like we're just jumping right into it. I mean, I do know that this book is a sequel, so I do realize that this author was probably setting up a lot of things in the previous book. But it's interesting because we actually start with the flash forward. Like, the prologue in the book takes place in 2016. And then in the first chapter of this book, we jump back in time to like 2008. So most of this book is actually taking place in the flashback chapters. And time has been moving very quickly. You know, we're jumping from like 2008 to 2009 to 2010, 2011, and it is a lot like the show in the way that you'll just kind of see like snippets of their lives over the years as they're like getting to know each other. And I do think something this author's doing very well is like the tension between them. Like, this is definitely reading like enemies to lovers. You know, like they don't get along, they don't even really like each other, but they're just kind of like using each other for sex, which is also very much like the show. And there have been a few scenes that have made me so happy because I recognize it from the show, like when they're doing the photo shoot together and they can't stop laughing, and just like all those little moments that I I loved from the show. I love seeing that in this book, but I also can't help but feel like at the same time that this book isn't nearly as entertaining as the show is. I don't know if it's because I'm still so early on in the book and like most of this book is just non-stop smut, which is great, but I feel like the characters aren't getting as developed as they did in the show. I don't know, I do feel a little bit of a disconnect with this. Like, I don't know if I'm loving the writing so much, and I'm actually really grateful that I did see the show first, because I feel like if I was trying to read this without having seen the show, I would feel absolutely nothing for these characters. But because I'm already familiar with them as characters, it is really fun to read this. I also just love Ilya's character. Like, his personality, he is so funny, and there will be so many times where he'll say these one-liners and I'm just like cracking up. Like, he's hilarious. But anyway, I'm gonna spend the rest of my day just listening to this one on audio. It was really nice earlier getting the acai bowl, and I was able to like walk around the park. It's not like too cold out today. It's like 50-ish degrees. So it was really nice to like get out today because it's very sunny. And I just drove down to my local mochi nut because I really wanted to pick up a few donuts. I'll have to show you them once I get home. I got cherry, cinnamon toast crunch, and hazelnut toffee coffee. Oh my god, yum. So I can't wait to snack on those this weekend. And then I did also get a boba tea. This one's my favorite. It's the brown sugar coffee latte with boba. Oh my god, this is my jam. Now about 10 o'clock at night. I made a really good dinner tonight for me and my parents. It was one of my favorite meals from HelloFresh. It's like the onion crunch chicken with like the honey mustard. Oh my god, it was so good. And then I ended up watching 3 more episodes of Supernatural season 9 with my mom. We watched some really good ones tonight because one of the ones we watched was like the mid-season finale. But anyway, I wanted to update you because I have finished reading Heated Rivalry, and I am kind of bummed that I do have some mixed feelings on this book, which is so weird to say, you know, because I was such a huge fan of the TV show. Like, the TV show is without a doubt a 10 out of 10, like one of my new favorite shows that I've ever seen in my life. And it's weird that I didn't love this book in the same way, because I actually do think this is a really solid book to screen adaptation, because there are a lot of scenes in this book that happen like word for word in the TV show. But for some reason, I just didn't love this book as much as I was hoping to. I mean, I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong. I think it's probably going to be around like a 3.5 star from me. This book definitely ended up winning me over a lot more in the second half, because for me, I feel like the first like 100 to like 150 pages of this book is just non-stop smut scenes over like years and years and years of time, which I know is kind of like how the show is. For some reason, just reading about it was really boring me, because I feel like the show did such a good job developing them as characters even during the smutty scenes. But then I think for me, the second half of this book was so much better than the first half, because the second half of this book involved a lot more intimacy between these two and a lot more vulnerability, which I've come to realize like that's the thing that I love about smutty scenes, because like smutty scenes are just like whatever, but I need the yearning, you know, like I need the longing between them. I need the pining. I think the thing that I look forward to the most in a smutty scene is like the really sweet and like intimate moments between them. And I feel like the first half was just lacking that a little bit for me. And it's crazy because it's like, I know you could say the same thing about the show. It just really goes to show how incredible those actors are, because they really made these characters come to life. And their chemistry was so insane in the show that like I ate up every single scene that they had together. Like I was obsessed. So I think the actors that are playing Shane and Ilya are phenomenal actors. Like they are literally so good. There were some scenes that in my opinion, they were so half-assed in the book, but then in the show, they were like my favorite scenes of the show. Like for example, there was this one scene in episode 5 that involved a phone call. Okay, if you know, you know. If you've seen the show, you know exactly which scene I'm talking about. That scene was so glossed over. Like it was so insignificant. And I was kind of shocked because like that was one of my top favorite scenes in the show. Like that's the scene that really made me cry. It made me emotional. And so I was kind of surprised that some scenes like that were like some of my top favorite scenes were really just glossed over in the book. So I feel like they took what was great about the book and they really expanded on it for the show. And I think this is actually one of those really rare scenarios where like the show is actually a lot better than the book. And so I would actually only recommend reading this if you have already watched the show, because I know for myself personally, like I might have DNF'd this, to be honest, if I hadn't already seen the show and I wasn't already familiar with the characters. Also, don't think that I love Rachel Reed's writing when it comes to romance. And I actually would recommend that if you're looking for something like Heated Rivalry, but you also kind of felt similar to how I did, I would highly recommend reading the book Him by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy, because this is my favorite male-male hockey romance that I've ever read in my life. I'm obsessed. I've read it 2 or 3 times, and honestly, like after reading this book today, it kind of makes me want to reread Him again. So I guess you'll have to let me know in the comments if you've read any of the other books in this series. Are there any other books in this series that you would highly recommend to me? Because I know not all of them follow the same couple. I think there's maybe like 3 books in the series that follow Shane and Ilya specifically, but I think all the rest of the books follow different couples. So maybe I could enjoy other books in this series, but I just don't know if I love this author's romance writing enough to continue. And then I think tomorrow I really want to get started on reading the Supernatural book, because I'm actually dying to know if this is going to be any good. This morning, it is Sunday. I had my book troop live show earlier today with Jan and Aaron, and it was so much fun. It was a really great live show. And then this morning, I decided to come down to the park because I really wanted to read the Supernatural book today in the park. And it's actually so nice out today. Like, it's only the first day of March, but the weather is already warming up so much. It's about 57 degrees out here, which feels super warm. And it's wild because I've been living in Washington for about 10 years now. And for like the first time ever, we didn't get any snow this winter, like at all, which is very strange for us. But anyway, I wanted to update you because I've just been sitting here in the park reading this, and I'm now 120 pages in, and I'm having some mixed feelings about it. I mean, something that I will say right off the bat is that this book is very fun in the sense that it really does feel like you're watching an episode of Supernatural, because the opening chapter, you're following the 2 guys who are like the victims of this supernatural thing that happens. And it's actually so weird because the very opening chapter of this book is from the perspective of these 2 guys who get beat to death by this orangutan in New York City. Like, it's so random. And then there's like another mysterious death that happens, and they start to piece together that both of the deaths are kind of related or like inspired by stories that Edgar Allan Poe has written. And so they think there's like a connection there. And so they take this case in New York City, and something that I like about this book is that it's kind of showing the stuff, I guess, that we don't ever get to see in the show. Like, for example, how difficult it is for them to try to find any parking in New York City for the Impala. And I think it actually makes sense maybe why they don't go to New York City so often in the show, is because there's nowhere for them to park the car. And I thought that was really funny and like really realistic. And I feel like there's some parts of this that feel so true to the show, and it's like cracking me up, like the way that Sam and Dean kind of like tease each other about different things. But I also feel like some of the writing just feels so clunky and like so awkward. Like, for example, one of the opening scenes in this book is when Sam is kind of having to like lie on the spot about why the credit card got declined, and Dean ends up telling him that when they grew up together, nothing about you ever screamed lawyer at me, so when you told me that you were applying to law school, it kind of threw me off, but I've been watching you over the last year and I think I figured it out. And he's basically trying to say like how good of a liar Sam is. And then Sam tells him, he says, yeah, I can pull the wool over people's eyes, and I do most of the research, and I know most of the lore, and I'm good with the weapons and hand to hand. And he just kind of like explains everything that he's good at in a way that felt so awkward. I feel like it was just the writer's way of like reminding the reader of like all the things that Sam does. Sorry, the lighting is getting so weird. But there are some parts of this that do feel a little bit cheesy. I mean, the fact that Dean has called Sam Sandwich twice in this book, like what the fuck? That is so random, and I don't think he's ever called him that in the show. And there's just like little inconsistencies that I've noticed. I thought one part was really funny because you're reading from the perspective of the woman who they're interviewing, and right when Sam walks up to her, she says she turned and saw the hottest man she'd ever seen in her life. There was another guy with him, but Claire didn't pay much attention to him. She was focused on this one guy. He had such amazing brown eyes, which, like, first of all, Keith, sir, who wrote this book, what do you mean that Sam had brown eyes? I mean, Keith clearly hasn't spent as much time gazing into Sam's eyes as I have, because what do you mean his eyes are not brown? Sam's eyes are like a greenish hazel color. So that was a little strange. And then she says he had such amazing brown eyes, and if he was the one who called her name, the sexiest voice she'd ever heard, right there and then she decided she would do whatever this guy asked. he was tall too, but not intimidating the way some tall guys were. I mean, I can't blame the girl for being like immediately flustered by Sam Winchester, but I just thought the description of that was so funny. Like, it is really giving a man writing a female perspective in that part. And it's so funny because I keep feeling like while I'm reading this book, it kind of does feel like I'm reading supernatural fan fiction in a way, but at least in my opinion, this reads way less juicy than the typical fan fiction that I've read for Supernatural, but it does feel like an episode of Supernatural, and I think it's kind of fun that you get to see those like behind the scenes type of moments that maybe you would never see on the show otherwise. I mean, not only did we spend more than a page with like Sam trying to figure out where to park the freaking car, but then there were also other scenes where like their card would get declined at the hotel and they would have to try to like figure out things money-wise, and I feel like this book is talking a little bit more about what it's actually like when they're on the road and how exhausting it is for them to spend hours on the road in between cases, and also talking about like their money problems because, obviously this job is not a job that pays. So it is kind of interesting to see those like details that we don't really get to see in the show. But I also think the writing in this book just isn't that great. I do think it's accurate to say that I've read fan fictions that are better than this book because the writing is just whatever. I mean, I think sometimes the characters are really acting like they do in the show, and then sometimes I'm like, what is going on? But I am invested in, the case that they're working on. Like, I definitely want to see what ends up happening there. But also, reading a mass market paperback feels so strange. Like, this book feels so tiny in my hands, but it still like really hurts my wrist to like keep the book open for too long. I feel like I need to break the spine or something. Anyway, that's the update. It's going well so far. I'm having a fun time, and I am loving the New York City vibes in this. So anyway, it's about 2:30 in the afternoon. I think I'm just gonna sit in the park a little bit longer and try to read more of this. There were a lot of people at this park earlier today, and it has really cleared out in like the last 30 minutes. Hopefully I'll be able to finish this book today, and I'll let you know my final thoughts. Okay, hello. It is many hours later. It's almost 9 o'clock at night. I was making my taco bowl earlier tonight, and when I was cutting the avocado, it accidentally got on my hoodie that I was wearing, and it stained it so bad. So I ended up taking it off, and I had to spray it a bunch of times, and like hopefully it doesn't stain. And then I did end up watching a few more episodes of season 9 of Supernatural with my mom. Oh my gosh, we watched some really interesting ones tonight. We watched the episode Firstborn. Oh, that was a 10 out of 10 for me, and that has to be one of my favorite episodes of this season so far. I loved the bonding scenes between Sam and Cass in this episode especially. So cute. Anyway, I wanted to check in with an update because I have finished reading the Supernatural book, and I think that this was fine, honestly. Like, I'm debating what I want to rate this, probably around like 3 stars. I do see the appeal with books like this because I do think in a lot of ways this book was really fun and it did feel like an episode of Supernatural, and I do think there were a lot of moments in this book that as a fan of the show I really did appreciate. I mean, I thought it was really interesting how because this book is taking place during season 2, I think it's really cool because it does align with like what's happening to these characters in season 2 of the show. I love that we get a lot of scenes with like Sam talking about his experience in college, and we also get a lot of different scenes with Sam kind of like talking about his religious beliefs, which I also thought was really interesting. And I thought there were some really funny moments between Sam and Dean that like really did feel authentic to the show. Like, Dean would make fun of Sam for like putting creamer in his coffee, or the guy that they were working the case with kept like mixing up their names, and it was really funny. And there was this one scene in this book where Dean started having all these conversations about his car, and Sam was like thinking to himself like, oh my god, this conversation is so boring, like I don't care about cars. And I was like, oh my god, he's so relatable because like that is so me, like I don't care about cars. Something that I didn't love about this book is that you not only get the perspectives of like Sam and Dean, and you do get the perspectives of all of the victims, but then you also get the perspective of this detective in this book, and like I really just did not care for that perspective in this. And it was also really annoying, and it got really repetitive because the detective kept calling Dean the same nickname over and over and over again. And you know how much I hate an overused nickname, and the nickname wasn't even a good one either. Like, she kept calling him Brushy Top. I also just think the ending of this book, it just wrapped up a little bit quickly for me, and I was like, oh, like that's it, okay, it's over. So I think this one has to be a 3 out of 5 for me. I just didn't really care for it very much, and like I don't think I'm gonna continue on with these books just because I don't think the writing is very good. And like if I do miss the show and I want to read something about the show, I'm probably just gonna stick to reading fan fiction, to be honest. I don't think the quality of the writing in this one is very good, and there are so many times where it's glaringly obvious that this was written by a dude. So I don't know, I feel like I'd also want to look into it to see if all of the books in this supernatural book series are written by the same guy, this Keith Mann. Do we think he wrote all 17 of the books? Or did he only write a few of them? Because maybe I'd be interested in reading the books if they were from different authors, but I don't really know. That is to be determined. All right, so that is a wrap on this reading vlog. I don't think this was the most successful reading vlog that I've ever had, but I also think this was great because I did find a new 5-star romantasy, which has never happened for me before, but I am kind of bummed that most of the books ended up being just okay for me. I know I mentioned this before, but I really would appreciate any book recommendations for books that give you similar vibes to the Vampire Diaries or Gilmore Girls, or even more recommendations for Supernatural, because I had a really fun time exploring that in this video, and I do think there are books out there that would give me all the happy feelings that these shows give me. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I would love to know if you've read any of these books, what are your thoughts on them? And also if you've seen any of these TV shows, let me know if you're a big fan of any of these shows as well. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!